All right. So thanks for joining me, bro. Um, you said you go by Jason, and I found you on the roommates, and I was listening to your story, and I always find it super inspiring when people like just talk about coming up from the bottom and getting up, and especially the way you did it with trading. So yeah, like if you want, just introduce yourself, and then we can go off that.
Yeah. So my name's Jason. I go by Stocky or the Stock Guy, which is just a funny story in itself how that came about. Like I was trading stocks as a hobby and just didn't have anywhere to do it. It's very lonely. And everywhere on the internet I went to try to, kind of like hang out with other people when I was trading, it was all either pump and dumps or people selling courses or people just saying whatever they think, and it had no real, merit to it. So I was like, well, maybe if I turn on a camera and trade, maybe other people that trade, we'll all just hang out and BS. And then it became more than trading. But I named myself the Stock Guy because that name was available and I was going to do stocks. And then now it's kind of like a brand. So it's kind of cool. And yeah, but I would say that I would say that, to be fair, to be 100% honest, I didn't make myself up from trading. Trading is a side thing. I like the idea of making people understand that trading stocks actively is a losing scenario. Even if you're good at it.
Yeah.
Hmm?
I wanted to talk to you about like your perspective on like business/trading, but like you just go on, and then I'll ask my question, and then
Yeah. So there's this idea that, like I was telling you right before we started recording, I think that part of the reason my brand has lasted as long through the ups and downs of the market and the economy is because I'm doing it differently. I'm not selling anything. I'm not promising anyone anything. I'm not saying, oh my God, look how good I am at trading. You can get rich and live on a yacht. Buy my course. Because people who are super successful at trading spend an hour of a day trading and they're done, right? Like they don't have the ROI to spend, if you're making thousands of dollars an hour trading, you're not spending all your time selling a $29 or $200 a month course at 50% off. There's no ROI there, right? Like, why are you spending all your time making less than you would trading? So it's hard to understand, but just like every multi-level marketing or pyramid scheme or whatever, people prey on other people's situations of like they're in a bad situation, they're looking for a handout or a piece of hope or some kind of opportunity to get themselves, and that's preying on people. And I don't have it in me to do that. That's why I've turned down all those sponsors I had and all this stuff. I don't sell courses. I just trade for me. I just happen to do it live, and then I spend the rest of my show trying to teach people about money and something that I'm passionate about that can help them. And like I said, don't get me wrong. It's not like I'm doing this for charity. Like, oh, I just doing this because I just want to help people out. No, that's part of it, but I also get paid pretty well to do it. So I'm a very transparent person. Like, I turn down a lot of money, but I make good money. So yes, if I wasn't getting paid, I wouldn't be doing this because I'd have to have a job. But yeah, so I just want always people to know that it's not trading, and 99% of traders, the more active they are, they will lose money in the end. And even if they're good at it, they will, not because they're bad at it, but because the markets change, because they get greedy, or because, it's guessing a lot of times.
So how did you start off? Like, how did all this trading stuff start off? Like, how did you start making money, and how did you come up?
Well, before we get into the background, it kind of started where, in 2000, and I got out of the military in 2007. And that was at the top of the housing market and the top of the a lot of different markets. And as I was transitioning out of the military, I was taking the money I had saved in the military and I was looking at investing in a property. And right before I did, I just kind of like, I don't know why. So I forgot exactly what happened. I think I just didn't have enough, or I just wasn't sure. And then the housing market crashed and the bank crashed and everything crashed. And I started trying to think to myself, like, holy crap, I dodged a bullet. But I was like, how does this work? How does money work? How do these bubbles develop? How does it happen? And I saw this movie that's an old school movie now. It feels like we're getting old, called Zeitgeist, right? And it was one of those ones that everybody was watching back in 2008, 2009. And there was like the 9/11 part and the conspiracy part and then the religion part. But then they got to the Federal Reserve and money. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. So there's this like long start. So that just led me down a rabbit hole, and I just kept learning, and I got a passion for it, and I love puzzles. And I was like, man, you could put these pieces. And so that kind of developed it. And then I started, investing, but then I started trading. And I was like every other kid out there. I was trying to trade penny stocks and get rich on this and buy this course and do all that. And I just kept losing all my money. And I said, there's got to be a better way. And that made me step back and start saying, okay, let me understand how companies make money and how they sustain and how you get a piece of that to grow it. And that led to investing, and investing led to trading. And then now here we are.
But how did you get the money to invest?
So what ended up happening is I when I got out of the military and I got into law enforcement for a little while. It wasn't my cup of tea, and then I was an armed officer for the trains or whatever like that. And then I spent a good portion of a lot of years out of it, drugs, alcohol, the whole cigarette smoking. I mean, I almost died. I'm dying in an emergency room hospital before I got my shit together. But when I came out of the VA, I don't call it rehab, but one of those like 4-month stay things to help me out. I ended up having some money left over from the military that had just been sitting there. And that's I had learned all this stuff before, and I had put that money in these different stocks before all the shit happened, right? And I just kind of forgot about it. And when I went back, I started seeing, oh my God, look how much this has increased, because I had bought all these stocks in 2009, 2010 when the market was at the bottom. And that got me thinking to myself, well, why are some of the companies I bought up and down? And so that just got me into that. I started investing, and then I started actively trading, because I was like, hey, let's be honest, it was a bull market for the past 10 years. It's not like it was hard to make money, but either way, it was like, oh, cool, this company is doing this and they're saving money here and doing that. Just like a household, you want to lend money. If you got to lend money to two people, you want the person who doesn't have a lot of debt and is getting promotions at work, right? Take that into the company side. And so that started, and then I started trading, and I did it as a hobby. And then, like I said, here we are.
That's interesting. Like I started with trading too. And the first big money I made was trading, and I was trading cryptocurrency. And it was 2 years ago. It was 2021, and I put in like 4K into this coin called Elongate, and I made like 250 grand. And I was just back then I was still in college. I was like literally in my college dorm. I had made like 250 grand, and I was like, that's crazy. And what you're saying is kind of resonating with me, because before that, I was trying to get basically rich, and I thought trading was the answer to that, right? And then what I did was, I remember I put money into Tesla, like beginning of 2021, when things started rallying up like crazy. I think that was like coming off the COVID money injections and everything, and Tesla was just pumping like crazy. And I found out about options trading, all that. And I put like $1,000 into Tesla options trading, and I lost all the money because it had crashed. And then Robinhood?
Mm-hmm.
I used like the $1,000 that Robinhood, they give you a free $1,000, but then you have to pay it back. You have to do a bank transfer.
Margin, yeah, the margin.
Exactly. I used that, which I didn't have, bought again, and then made the $1,000 back, and then I was at zero. And that's when I got me thinking. I was like, trading is actually super, super dangerous. So that's what I want to ask you. Like, would you, let's say an upcomer who's like trying to make money, let's say right now, where the markets aren't even that good right now, would you like recommend someone to start a business, or would you like just like a 19-year-old? Would you say, okay, kids, go start a business, or like start trading? Because you just said that trading is actually super, super dangerous. And mind you, like the 250K I made from crypto, I ended up losing like 150K in one single greedy trade that I did, and I lost $150,000. So
all it takes is one. All it takes is one. Here's what I would say. I wish I could do a blanket statement, but everybody has a different situation, right? Like the first thing people need to worry about is especially when they get out on their own, is an emergency fund, right? Because no one it's like, I'll give you an example. Every situation, especially with trading, when I go into, I don't go in thinking, okay, how much am I going to make before I decide to sell and get out? I go into every trade thinking, what's the max loss, right? Okay. So if I go in thinking that and I set it, then then I've already prepared myself for the worst, and anything above that is just juice, right? And so it's like I go into my trades. Like when I day trade shares, I don't go in and say, okay, I'm going to put this much in, and if I get this much, I'm going to sell. I go in and I say, okay, how much am I willing to lose in this trade? $100? Okay, I can put $10,000 in shares, put a 1% trailing stop loss the moment I buy it, and if it falls immediately and it hits 1%, I'm out. I'm lost $100. Okay. Even though I have $10,000 in there, my max loss is 100, but I've already prepared for that. Or if 200 is, I put 5,000, right? At 2% trailing stop loss. So that's what I do. And then if it just goes up, that trailing stop loss follows it, kicks me out there, and I'm guaranteed to never lose more than 100 or make money, right? When it comes to this, it's like life. You want to have an emergency fund, but in every situation with emergency fund, it also depends on what your network is like. Somebody like me, when I was 23, I had no parents, I had no real friends, I had nothing. So I needed to have more of an emergency fund. Somebody who has parents who have liquidity or money or equity or has a good network of friends or whatever, they don't have to have as much emergency fund, because if shit hits the fan, they can go and rely on people. So it's never a cookie cutter. As far as a 19-year-old right now, I would say don't focus on, on any of that right now. Like there's this old saying that says the younger you are, the more risks you should take. I agree, but not when it comes to your money, because when it comes to compounding money, it's not about how much money you put in, it's about the time you put in. There's a chart that shows if you put $100 a month in when you're 20 and you want to have it and you have a certain amount of money at 65, if you wait 10 years, you have to put in $1,000 a month to get to the same amount. 10 more years, 10,000 a month, right? Because it's about the time and compounding. That's the biggest thing in the world is compounding interest. And when you're young, you have time. So I disagree there. But at 19, yeah, go ahead.
So what do you think about, because like I myself, I became super successful now and I'm super young. And a lot of young people, I feel like they don't want to wait until they get rich, especially now with Instagram and everything, where everyone has private jets, everyone has Rolexes, and you have like Jake Paul, all these people who are like young and killing it. And then the young guys, like, I'd rather risk it all and try to become a millionaire by the age of 25 than to wait until maybe 60, and then I would for sure maybe get a millionaire. Like, what do you think about that? Do you think like one should be more aggressive with the approach, or is it just like a lose situation, especially when it comes to trading?
You're going to be 60 regardless. Do you want to be 60 and working your ass off because you didn't make smart decisions when you were 20? Or do you want to be 60 and relaxing? You're going to be 60 either way. Mm-hmm. You have to decide how, because it's a lot harder to be broke when you're old than it is when you're young. Yeah. Now, as far as getting rich and quick, I would say when it comes to your money, play the long game. When it comes to your ambition and how you earn the money, go big and go home, because the market is not what you shouldn't use the market to make money. You should use the market to grow money. Yeah, right. So that's the idea. You want to make money while you sleep. You can't, the idea of I'm going to take all this money now. Like, for example, I'm turning 38 in April. I wish to God I could go back to 18 and say, all that money I blew at the casinos and doing stupid shit like that. If I would have just bought Apple and Google and Amazon and left it there, I would already be massively successful, right? But now I'm having to make up for lost time. So I don't like that idea. Now, I do like the idea of being ambitious, but use the market to grow your money, whether the market is the stock market, whether it's real estate market, whatever. Don't use it to make your money, because when you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And yeah, sure, if you're 21 years old and you F up, you can restart. But how many times can you restart before you're in debt and then you're 30 all of a sudden? Because time goes by quick. Yeah. You know what I mean? And as somebody who, like I said, wasted a lot of years for a lot of reasons, I can't get that time back. I like to use this new mentality I have where I say, man, I'm 30, turned 38. If I could wake up at 18 again, think of all the things I would do differently, right? The difference, the changes I would make, the decisions I would make, the people I dated, the friends I had, the money invested. Okay, I can't do that. But what if I pretend I went to bed last night at 58 and woke up this morning at 38 and I get to do it all over again?
That's true.
And now I'm 38, so I'm gonna think it that way.
Yeah, that's super smart. And I totally agree with that, because when it comes to investing, I think that's exactly what kills a lot of people, and which kind of killed me, because I was with the mindset. I went in with the mindset, like, fuck this shit. It's all in, and we're just gonna see what happens. And I didn't have this mindset where it was like, okay, I need to just, like, the money that I'm investing should grow over time. It's better if I'm making small percentages over time and I'm making them for sure than going all in and losing everything and making it without any risk management. And I came to the conclusion, I think as a young guy, you should, the most important thing is focusing on your ambition and focusing on making sure that you're learning a skill that is able to get you a lot of large earned income, so that you can just take the money, park it, and be like, yo, 30 years or in 20 years from now, I'm going to be a multi-millionaire.
Yeah. But you have to have moderation. Now, one thing I would say is that you hit a very important thing that people don't understand. That's risk management, right? So if
Yeah.
you do get into something and it starts exploding up, there's a horrible thing that happens. It's that FOMO, that fear of missing out. If I sell now and it keeps going, I'll regret it. But nobody thinks if I sell now and it falls. So I like to do this idea. Same thing when I'm day trading or when I'm investing in something that's kind of speculative. As it starts going up quick, I start scaling out little by little. That way, I keep a good portion or some in if it keeps going up. But if it crashes, I've locked in my profits, and that takes years and years. It's like Mike Tyson said, right? It's very famous. Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face, right? It's the same thing. And you get punched in the face enough times, you learn how to duck.
Yeah.
And so I think that. Now back to your last point, about, it's very tough to say, okay, I want to get rich now, but I also don't want to have to do the long run right until I'm 60, right? I believe there's a big misunderstanding of moderation, and it's part of our society. Our society has moved close into a quick get rich now, TikTok 30-second videos. I'm bored. I need to hit it and quit it. No relationships, no marriage. It's always about instant gratification. And that's fine, but that will ruin you because you want to set your future self up for success, but you also don't want to give up your time now, because imagine chasing, giving up all the passion, all the love, all the excitement for 40 years so that you can have 10 to 20 years of freedom, but looking back and saying, wow, I got this one life. I don't get another one. It's almost over. And I gave it all up. I can't go back and have that time. That time's gone. Wow, I really screwed up. And now you're sad. And you also don't have the physical ability to enjoy it the same. So you have to have moderation, right? Go enjoy yourself. Take care of yourself. Be smart. Do it on discounts. But think about it. Like, for example, last point, because I feel like I'm on my stream right now. The last point, and this is what I tell my guys all the time.
Yeah.
There's a horrible thing that happens. Forget this fear and greed cycle that we go through. Like, oh my God, I need to have this because it makes me look good or feel good or everyone likes me. I have to work more. Now I bought it. Now I'm in debt. Now I have to work so I'm not in debt. And now I need to buy more. And it's a cycle. But here's the other thing, right?
Yeah.
As we start making more money in our lives, we need to understand that just because I make more money doesn't mean I need to spend more money.
Yeah.
So if I go from making $50,000 a year and I get a $20,000 raise, do I need to up my lifestyle by that 20,000? No. Why not up it by 5,000 or 10,000 and now add that 10,000 into your future self? So you're still upping yourself, having a good time, but taking more care of your future self.
Yeah. But what do you think about then? Because like in this day and age, and I totally agree with that, because if you spend too much money, what happens is that if times get tough, all of a sudden you look at your bank account and you have like nothing basically. And you're like, I earned all this money and it's fucking gone. So what do you think about the concept of, let's say, take your money, investing it into a lifestyle so that you can get status, and then people, whatever, look up to you, and then that way you can make money in the attention economy that we have? Like, what do you think about that?
I think that you're just chasing a carrot on a stick, because I'll give you an example. I'm a streamer, right? I'm on Twitch. I started streaming 3.5 years ago to 5 people. Okay. There are 17 million and 17.8 million active streamers on Twitch. Okay. Most of them, almost all of them, stream to like 3 people or less, right? They'll never make a dime at all. Yeah. And of the top million, right? You if you're averaging 100 viewers, you're in the top 1% of streamers, but you're making below poverty level money, right? Yeah. Right. So the idea is that, like, you see these streamers out here and everyone thinks they can do it, but there's only 700 or 600 in the world that are making 100 grand or more a year, right? So the idea of is, let me quit my job, let me buy all this camera equipment, let me do all this, and now I'll be a successful streamer just like these people. You're going to quit your job, you're going to spend what money you have, you're going to grind for 3 years, you're going to have nothing, and you're going to regret it. Sure, there's every now and then there's somebody that can, but it's the idea of keeping up with the Joneses, right? Like, it's all about, I want to have this because this person has it, and if they have it, they're successful, I'll have it. You know how many people in America are in debt right now? I mean, we have trillions of dollars. I mean, I'm the wealthiest person in my entire neighborhood, but people probably think I'm the poorest. And not because I want to look poor, it's just because I don't put my money in depreciating assets for other people's approval. You know what I spend my money on? Experiences, not things.
How much percentage of your money do you spend? Like, I mean, like a percent
on what? Like
in general,
necessities,
like,
on it.
Just like let's say you want to go to just fly, business to some country or be in a hotel, like just like spending your money. How much percentage of your money do you just spend on stuff?
Very little. I would say that on non-essential like things for whatever, I would say I probably spend 10% of my income on that.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy with it because, and that's because I make a lot more, but whatever. But like my idea is for example, instead of buying a brand new car at $50,000 for no reason, it's a depreciating asset. I went out and bought a used 2016 GMC Acadia, right? And I bought it cash and I have it. And you know what? I don't lose 30% of the value right now. And why did I buy something brand spanking new, right? Why would I buy something brand new? The
Yeah.
general reason somebody buys a brand new vehicle is because they think they're rewarding themselves for something or because they want other people to see that as a status, right? It's not like
Status
I
thing.
want to, nobody says I want to buy a brand new car because it's going to hold its value more.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, it's totally a status thing. Like, I mean, I guess it also depends like on the age group. I think like the older, the older you get in general, the more wise you get with your money, right? Because like I have
Yeah.
because I also have like a network where I help people make money, and I see like these guys. Just recently, there was this guy, and he spent 16K on like this hotel in Switzerland where he just always wanted to go there, and it was like a week or something, and it's just like on a lake with some views and a hotel and good service, and he spent 16K on that. And I was like, bro, that's kind of pushing it. That's kind of pushing it. I see that mindset with like younger people.
Well,
But
it also comes down to the portion of his income. If he's making 5 million a year, then that doesn't matter. But if he's making 100K a year, that's crazy.
He's making 30K a month, I think. So yeah,
Well, if that's a once in a year thing, then maybe. But I was just looking at cool Airbnbs in Switzerland, and there was places that were like 550 a night, and it was like a giant thing on the edge of a mountain and a waterfall overlooking. I'm like, man, give me that. Give me that right there. Let me spend my money on other stuff.
I mean, like, to be honest, like, I have a mixed mindset on that because I do think, like, looking back, for example, the 150,000 that I told you that I lost, like, I do think back and I'm like, it would have been just better if I would have just spent that money, even if it was on some dumb shit. Instead of losing that money, I should have just spent money on some shoes, just bought some random stuff, like just experiences, at least so I have that. And I do, like, I totally agree, you have to save your money. But I also think there should be some degree of like just trying to enjoy the fruits of your labor, but not doing it to the point where you become reckless and jeopardizing
moderation. Yeah, moderation.
Yeah, because
enjoy your life, but prepare for the future. Also, and I don't mean to do this because I've done what you were just talking about. That's a coping mechanism we do where something like if we have something and then we give it away or we lose it, we're like, man, do you know how many things I could have done with that money? I shouldn't have done that or that. And we always do that. But then at the same time, if that money kept growing more, we'd be like, man, I'm sure glad I left it in there. So it's a tough thing. I've been there. I've been there with investments as well. So, but yeah, no, you're absolutely correct. You have to enjoy your life because you don't want to scrape by pennies and suffer now so that your future self can look back and say, wow, I really gave up all those opportunities. It's just about finding that healthy balance. Like if you're doing something because you want to and not because of how it's going to make others feel, then I think you're doing the right thing. But if it's like, oh, I want to do this so I can put on Instagram so other people can be jealous of me, like your original question of what do I think about people who spend all their money on flashy things to get status and stuff like that? Two things are going to happen. Either A, that person who's always posting flashy things is either actually broke and sad and is doing it for validation, or they're selling something to someone else. Those are the only two people, in my opinion, that I've noticed. I mean, that may be outlined, but the two types of people I see out there that are putting their flashy lifestyles out there are generally either doing it for validation or are selling the dream or something to someone else. And I mean, that's just what I've seen. And I'm not against it because to each their own. I just think that if somebody wants to be smart with their money and they want to, have that moderation, that's probably not the right path for everyone.
Okay. Yeah, that's some really good points. What I also wanted to talk about, because you hit on that, and that's one thing that I've gotten super, super interested in, is like just this financial world of like being in debt, the modern enslavement, all these things that are actually keeping guys and people down nowadays. Because you said you're 38, right?
Turning 38 in April, yeah.
Yeah, because I was talking about that, and like he was giving me this advice. He was like, "Yeah, I don't know, maybe you should just buy like some real estate, a house or something." And just the way he was explaining it, I thought to myself, I was like, maybe like 30, 40 years ago, a college student that got out of college found this job, which was probably like, if it was a good job, would almost pay him 6 figures a month. I mean, 6 figures a year. Inflation was like not as rampant as it was. And the average guy could just get out, maybe buy some house or something for his family on a mortgage, and just put his family in and pay it off over time, and he will be fine. But now we live like in this world where the banks, the debt, the way that inflation is being run, like the hidden inflation, all those things are putting so much pressure on the average guy that it's crazy. And with credit card debt, like what would you say are things that are keeping like people nowadays financially enslaved?
I mean, one thing to keep in mind, this isn't making excuses for people, our parents' generation and their parents' generation, but one thing to keep in mind too is that, yeah, they bought a house at like $82,000 back then, but they also had a 17% mortgage rate, which if they took 30 years to pay off, they were going to pay way more than we do now. But that's a separate point.
Okay.
What keeps us now is that it's advertising, right? Like we're becoming the world, it's like the dystopian movies from the 80s, right? Like if you watch like Running Man and you watch Demolition Man and all those like dystopian movies from the 80s, like everything was just ad billboards everywhere, right? Like because they didn't have the idea of the internet back then, so they thought it would just be ads everywhere. Well, that's what it is now. And the way to make money is to convince everyone that in order for them to be happy, they need to buy things. They need to own things. They need to have a flashy car, go on a big vacation. They need to have the latest handbags or the shoes or the watch or whatever. And in my opinion, this is going to sound a little like boomerish, but the death of the third location. Okay. So we have two locations in our life, work and home. There was a place that we used to have called the third location, right? And that's why it's a place where we used to go and hang out with people, whether it was a bowling alley, a bar, a church, football games or whatever. We used to have that, right? And that was where we made our connections, and that's where we got to talk and do everything. For example, I saw a comment recently that says the show Cheers. You remember the show Cheers that was back in the, I don't know if you remember that, if I'm probably dating myself here, but it was hey, where everybody knows your name. It was a show about a bar, right? And all these different characters that used to show up there. And it didn't matter what your social status was, what your money was. It was inviting. It was a neutral place. There wasn't political leaning. There wasn't anything. It was a third place. We've lost that. And we get our social connections via the internet, right? And online, whether it's watching somebody else or playing video games or whatever. I'm a streamer. I rely on it. So, I may be part of the problem. But because of that, now instead of finding out what makes us happy, we're more lonely. We're social creatures, right? We're social creatures by habit, but we're more lonely, more introverted, we're more locked inside. So we find less happiness. And all of a sudden we get told, have this, it'll make you happy. This will make you happy. This will make you happy. So then you go out and you buy it, right? And now everybody's in debt. On top of that, as you said, inflation is running out of while. Wages are not keeping up with inflation by any stretch of the means, and people are so financially irresponsible because of ignorance. And there's nothing wrong with being ignorant, right? Being ignorant just means lack of knowledge. People are ignorant and they get stuck in that fear and debt cycle. And I think that is going to come to a head until either we're never going to wake up as a society because we're divided, right? It's intentional. This is going to sound like I'm going down that tinfoil hat, but rich people, the people elite and the people in power, they love when people fight, because if the middle class is blaming poor people, thinking that poor people are trying to come take what they have, and poor people are fighting the middle class thinking they've taken what they should have, and that fight is going on, whether it's over money, whether it's race, geopolitics, whether it's over your religion, doesn't matter. The more people at the lower rungs keep fighting, the less they're going to get together to take down and stop the problems until the society collapses or the people rise up. And that's going to happen eventually.
That's so true. And like one of the things, especially when I was in college, I started making money maybe like I did the 250K when I was still in college, but then like my earned income really started like right about when I was about to end college. And I realized that a lot of people put energy in the wrong direction. So for example, like I'm a black guy, right? When I was in college, a lot of my black friends who would just talk about racism all the time, right? Like, yo, racism here, racist there, this and that. And then I would always think to myself, why are you spending so much energy trying to be a victim, right? For me,
Exactly.
it was always flipped. I was always like, okay, like I looked at myself being black as a superpower. Like I would be like, okay, like I have a six pack, I'm strong, this and that. Black people go to the Olympics more often, da da da. And I was like, just use your energy, use your mind. Instead of focusing on this dumb shit, focus on making money, focus on being better. And it's not, for example, just racism. It's, for example, sexism, like all these things that are now inventions of society where people didn't even think that much about these things, like racism, sexism. Now it's with the transgender thing, like all these things that are not coming up, all the isms, and like sucking the energy out of the average person so that he cannot focus on what is really important. And like just in the last few like months and everything, I started really realizing how the world is like just set up with the banking system, all the inflation that's coming up. Just like, for example, what many people don't know is they think inflation is just 10%, but if you look at other like just other things that rich people tend to buy, like private jets, Rolexes, and all that, like they shot up even more, like when inflation was really rampant. And people don't know that even worse things are coming because they're just distracted with all the isms and all the minor stuff and all the protests, for example, that were happening back then. And it's crazy. It's like I feel like the rich people are just super easily playing out the people on the bottom so that they can just fight with each other, be like in this low frequency state, and then they just collect all the money and laugh about it.
Yeah, I mean, it's you hit the nail on the head. I want to go back to what you're saying about the victimism. You know, there is, I mean, there is going to be isms in the world. You know what I mean? Like it's as we get more as you know, understanding society, and I think that as we get more connected and information is more readily available, people are going to become less isms because, you know, back in the old days, right? If you were in the South and you were white and you were born to a white, you know, family, and they grew up during, you know, Jim Crow and everything, they taught you everything you knew, and they're like, oh, those people ain't the same as us or whatever like that. But now you have the internet, so you kind of see, you know, black actors or women actors or whatever, and you start to lose that. But back to what you were saying, which I think is super important. Yes, there's always going to be, you know, and I'm not one of those people like, oh, I'm white male, I can't talk about this stuff. No, everybody should be able to talk about things.
Yeah.
And so not from you, but from other people that in the internet. And so what I like to say is, you know, people are, there's going to be racism, there's going to be sexism, there's going to be things in the world. You can't control those things, right? You can do it. And as somebody who grew up, you know, in a horrible, you know, physical, mental, and psychological abuse household. I was taken away by the state several times. Eventually I lived in the state. I came in, I was an alcoholic, a drug addict, you know, I was the scum of society, whatever. But what I've learned is that a lot of times, and you touched on this, is that we're taught by society to be a victim, right? You are a victim. Even if you don't know you're a victim, you're a victim. Okay. You are a woman, and therefore you are looked down less, you are paid less, and you are thought of less. And even if a woman who's like, well, maybe that happens to some women, but not for me or anybody. No, you are a victim, and you need to be mad about it. And if you're not a victim, then you need to stand up for the ones who are victims. Okay, we get what you're saying, but you condition everyone to be a victim. You're black. You are all white people hate you. You are never going to get paid as much. You're never going to get a mortgage. You're never going to get a job. You know, you're this. You come from a broken home. You're just a gangbanger. You're going to end up in prison, right? You're a victim. You are Hispanic. You are, you know, illegal, whatever. We're taught to be victims, right? And that's because it draws either anger or it draws selling. My idea is that, like, I was a victim of many things, right? But I like the idea of, and I think so many people would be able to become so much more successful if they went from the mentality of I'm a victim to I'm an underdog.
Yeah, exactly.
You see what I mean? So instead of thinking the world's pushing you down and shitting on you, and well, why even bother? I'm already, the odds are stacked against me. Why should I bother? Or, you know what? I hate everyone else of that. No, I'm an underdog. I'm an underdog, or I'm a survivor. Cancer. Have you ever seen anybody who got cancer, who's fighting cancer, say, I'm a victim of cancer?
No, not really, actually.
No, they say I'm a fighter
Yeah.
or I'm a survivor.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That's true. And yeah, it gives you power. I really think like the way you talk to yourself and the perspectives you choose in life, they absolutely give you power. And I really think like nowadays, you're trying to take away so much power from the people, especially also from young men. And it's terrible. Like the average guy nowadays, like his dating life is just absolutely like a mess. He can't even talk to women. Like he doesn't get taught in school anything about finances. He gets lied to that he's a victim because of either and it's funny, like either way that you put it, you're a victim. Like if you're a white guy, blah blah blah, like you're also a victim because everyone's like teeing off on you because whatever, because you're this white guy suppressing everyone. But if you're like the straight white male thing, but if you're a black guy, you're also a victim because straight white males are supposedly teeing off on you. And if you're a woman, then all men are teeing off on you. And if you're a straight woman, that's maybe also strange because why not be like a transgender or something? And it's just they're like inventing so many issues and so many things just to try to keep you down. And yeah, I think it's absolutely a horrible thing. And even
Maybe
like,
not inventing the issues, but amplifying them.
yeah, that's
Because
really,
there's always going to be these issues, but you know, it's just like it's always going to be like for example, there's an issue with my grass out front. It's not raining enough and the grass is starting to get brown, right? There's an issue there, but I can go water the grass and help it come back, or I can go plant some stuff like that. But if I don't do anything and everybody starts complaining about it, then the whole neighborhood's going to be looking at it and everybody's gonna be like, oh my God, your grass is, you know what I'm saying? Like it could be a small issue that is there. I mean, like I said, don't get me wrong. There is a lot of shit in people in this world, but like you said, a lot of it is amplified to the point where people are told you can't be a certain way because you are this, right? You're poor, therefore you can never be successful because whatever, you know, and like and even if something is true, it's amplified. Let me give you an example. This is a true stat. About, I don't know the exact numbers. I would say somewhere probably 30-35% of all poor people stay poor because they don't know how to manage money. Okay. Right? Like even if they were given money, they don't know how to manage it. They'll spend it on stuff and whatever, they won't do it the right way and they'll stay poor. Okay, maybe that's true. But when you tell people that they're going to stay poor forever because society's shitting on them or whatever, then that's what they believe. And so they have no incentive to like, you know, oh, well, I'm just in the shit situation. Instead, let me go better myself, or let me find out how I can get out of this situation. I'll give you a last example with this. I talk to my audience all the time. I said, did you know, no one's ever told you this, but I'll tell you this right now, you know, and I tell them, I say, I used to be a hiring manager at a hotel. I went through lots and lots and lots of applications. And oftentimes the one thing that would get them to the round of meeting me and then the round of meeting me and moving on, one of them was, what are their qualifications, right? There's so many, they're all exactly the same, carbon copies. I said, did you know you can go online right now and there's a site where you can get thousands and thousands and thousands of free certifications online on your dime off on the weekend for an hour during your lunch break at home. Go on there, get certified in whatever. It could be anything, you know, CPR, it could be Microsoft Word, it could be Office. And now you have this to put on your resume, right? That could fluff your resume. That could give you an example. And then the other one is when you go into the interview, right? A lot of people go in there and they're very robotic and stuff like that. No, look around, find something that's connection, make yourself memorable, know some facts about the company, see something on the wall with the interviewer, make a joke about it, get a connection, be memorable, right? But we're not taught these things, you know? And so, you know, I'm rambling here, but like, I really believe that the idea of what you're saying is that we're told to be a victim for whatever reason, that it just stops us from getting out of that cycle where people learn to love their chains.
Yeah.
I know you've heard that, not from, you know, necessarily from specific slaveries in history, but it was something that was said in the show Game of Thrones. People learn to love their chains. They like the idea of knowing where to be, what to do, where they're supposed to be, that cookie cutter. People get scared to break out of those chains because it's a crazy world.
People want security. I think that's what it is. People just love security. Like they would rather just have security, but not like live the life that they would truly want. But in exchange, like they would want the security, at least that, you know, at least they can whatever do a few things that they want to do. And yeah, that's a good point. And but like why do you think what's actually the reason? And that's another thing that I changed my mind on after I started thinking about it. Like, what's the reason, for example, that the wealth gap keeps getting bigger and bigger? What do you think is the main reason for that? What would you say in your opinion?
That's a tough one. There's so many factors. I think the wealth gap keeps getting bigger and bigger. First off, you can it depends on how you look at the statistics, right? Statistics can be skewed in any way. I'll give you an example, right? I find myself probably one of the most centrist type of political people in the world. But what I would say is like, look at gun stats, for example, right? Like you can say easily that there is 62,000 gun related deaths in America every year, right? And that's true. But if you break down the statistics, right, how many of those are gang violence, right? So, okay, take that part out. Now you're down to like 30 or 20,000. How many of those are suicides? Okay, now you're down to, and you break it down, it comes, another stat is like mass shootings, right? Mass shootings is 4 or more people injured, right? So it's like we think in our brain this, or we think school shooting. Well, if somebody's having a drug deal across the street, it goes wrong in the middle of the night and a bullet hose and hits the school, it's counted as a school shooting. I think we have too much gun violence in this world and in this country, but at the same time, right, we can always look at stats differently. As far as the wealth gap, yes, the gap between the wealthiest and the poorest is growing exponentially. But it's not because the poor are getting poorer necessarily, it's because the richer are getting richer. And I got a lot of heat for this. I would never defend a billionaire, right? Like, especially one that squanders their money and hides it offshore. But we need billionaires in this world because as people not only have the ambition to get to that level, but it causes more and more growth and innovation and competition because everybody wants to get rich. Everybody wants this. We want this to grow. The idea that the poorest person in America today has it better than the richest person in America had it 150 years ago.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Because all of society was brought up. If you cut off that 1%, right? And you kill it. Well, first off, you kill innovation, you kill growth, and you kill a lot of ambition, but also you start losing and losing a lot of that up and coming we've had. And like I said, we have a lot of changes to make, and the poorest people shouldn't be as poor as they are. But those people are the reason why society has continued to go up. I mean, if you work at McDonald's in America, you're in the top 1% in the world.
That's a super good point. Yeah, I think a lot of people, and that's smart thing as you said with the statistics. I think a lot of people also get a wrong idea because they're just in one place. Like if you actually go to a poor country, if you actually go maybe to Africa or like some place in Indonesia or the Philippines, like the way to live there, it's so much poorer than like probably a poor guy in the West. And it's just the truth. And in many places, it's actually way, way worse than it is in probably the West and stuff. So I think people should have a reference about that. But it also comes probably like if you just don't know, if you don't travel. And as to the billionaires thing, I totally agree with that too, because in my mind, like I talked with a friend about this, and he was telling me that capitalism connected to materialism and all that, it's actually a bad thing. And then I told him, like, you should know that capitalism is probably one of the best things ever that happened on this planet. Because even though the richest of the rich got super rich, it lifted the entire, just like the entire tide. Like everyone got more, like capitalism lifted probably more people out of poverty than anything else. And,
absolutely.
And people just don't want to see that. And I think life is a competition. And like you said,
to be fair though, true capitalism or the type of capitalism, we have crony capitalism, right? Like we have a lot of like money from corporations being in politics. That's not a true form of capitalism, right?
That's like socialism for the top, essentially, right?
Well, but at the same time, everybody wants to think that their form of government or form of economics is a utopia. No, they're all run by people, and people are shit. But here's the thing. And I'm not a defender of capitalism per se, but as form of not government, but a form of economy, socialist economy is an oxymoron. You can't have socialism as a form of economy because then you don't have growth, you don't have innovation, and what happens is then you just you get far behind, and you either dissipate, fall into anarchy, or are taken over. But here's what I'll say about it as well, is that I like I said, I don't necessarily think it's the greatest, but I have never heard a person who has either come from or escaped from an economy or government that was under pure
Yeah.
socialism or communism that ever defends it. The only people I've ever heard defend or shit on capitalism and offer those other forms as a solution are people who've never lived under that. And I find that a very interesting fact. Like I said, I'm not here to defend capitalism, but I've never met somebody from Soviet Russia or from Venezuela or from, China, or like actual China, or any of these countries who have gotten out of there, moved to another country and say, man, we should really bring that form of government here.
Exactly. And that's exactly what I meant. You hit it on
I'm
the nail.
sorry, form of economy, not government, because China is a communist government, but they have a capitalist economy.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly what I meant with like a reference point. A lot of people don't have a reference point. Like they'll shit on capitalism. All right, cool. Then go live in a communist place. Like actually go live in a place where they have the exact economy that you want to have, or like you said, it's not a real economy, but the form of government that you have. And the true story is always like, for example, my parents, they came from Nigeria. I mean, Nigeria is not communist or anything. But you could argue, like, in some sense, like my dad was in the war and everything, and
oh yeah, but I mean, 20 years ago, Nigeria versus now, big difference.
yeah, and he grew up in the war and everything. And he came to Austria, and I don't think he would be complaining about. And a lot of people, I feel like they never see where people can come from, and that's what makes him like complain and say this and this. And that. Like the grass is definitely not greener on the other side. Maybe this grass has some issues as well. It's not perfect, but it's definitely, the other grass is definitely not greener on the other side. So
yeah, because remember, everybody's brain, they want that utopia. They think, okay, well, they're doing it wrong. But if we did what that form is the right way, the way I think it should be, then everything would be fine. But it's not going to, because you have people, and people are shit, right? You cannot, I mean, there's never been a power that was taken over. I mean, even in America, we're an experiment. We're the first form of government in history that was written with the power of the people. And slowly but surely over time, the federal government has taken little bits of that power away, and we're getting closer and closer through it. And people are like, oh, well, the Democrats are the bad ones or the Republicans are the bad ones. No, they're all doing it, right? The Democrats via, taking more and more control away from individuals and corporations, and the Republicans taking more and more, freedoms away from people when it comes to religious things, and giving more leeway to corporations. So we have that problem, but it's the idea of the utopian society, and it's not going to work. There is no such thing as a utopia. People say, oh, well, anarchy is great. Have you ever been to Somalia? Have you ever been to Sudan? The problem is that when you have an anarchy, what do we go back to? People learn to love their chains. People want to have security. So that what happens is you have little groups, or you have little tribalisms. They find people that are going to protect them. Usually it's the nastiest, evilest people, because everyone's scared of them. And then they take over, and then they war with the next one. And it's just completely, you just don't have that. So it's just not as easy as everyone looks at it. Sure, capitalism has a lot of problems, and it is what it is. But as a form of economy, I mean, even China, right? Like people say, well, look at China, they're a communism. No, their government is, not their economy, right? Like, because you can't have that, because if not, they would fall behind. Yep. People are going to be hurting, and we should do a better job as a society to help people. But you know what? Do you want to? Let me leave you with this this conversation. Do you want to know why politicians never help homeless people?
I mean, I have my ideas about it, but I want to hear yours.
They don't pay taxes and they don't vote.
Okay, yeah, probably. That's
the truth.
That sounds like what I would have said, yeah.
Yeah, because homeless people, they'll run on it to feel good, and people can vote for them to feel good, but they never do anything about the homeless population, because it's like, oh, well, we should help. We're spending $1 trillion on military spending and $1 trillion on defense spending. What if we spend a little bit, 40 billion to Ukraine? Why don't we spend it here? Yeah. Because that's not going to get them votes or taxes. Homeless people don't have money and they don't vote, so nobody's going to help them. That's the society we're in, and it sucks. It fucking sucks. Why is it on the American people to have to help out other people, right? Like, why aren't we doing this? But, like I said, there's no right answer here. There's no right answer.
Why would you say America is then sending hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine if they wouldn't vote or pay taxes? I mean, what would you
influence? It's an empire. We have an empire. We have an empire. We have 180 bases in something like 90 countries. We spend $1 trillion a year on military. Here's a lot of people don't know this about money, about our budget. Defense spending and military spending are not the same thing.
Okay.
So we have a 900 to a $1 trillion defense budget, and then we have another separate $1 trillion military budget for around the world.
Yeah.
And we're doing that because we won wars. We wanted to have readiness, and we wanted to have a presence in those places. But here's the thing: just like with the federal government, anytime the bar is raised, it's not a ceiling, it's a floor. So every time the federal budget is raised, every time the military spending is raised, every time it's always going to become a new floor and never a ceiling. And the same thing with social programs, right? Like you can't give somebody something and then take it away later on. It becomes a floor. And we're just getting out of control. Now, sure, we can continue on this path as long as we're the biggest, economic superpower. But at some point, somebody's going to say, hey, I don't think America's going to be able to pay their bills the same way others will. Our credit rating gets dropped, and that's when defaults can happen. And that's the scary point that I'm looking at.
So yeah, that kind of ties back to also what I want to ask you. Like with all these problems coming in and all the things that you just mentioned, and the West or America even facing the risk of just declining and just falling like Rome did. What should like the average guy do? Like what how I feel like being average nowadays is not even enough anymore. Just being normal is not even enough. With all these problems that you said and that you talked about, in my opinion, I think that like just being normal isn't enough anymore. You need to have enough money, for example, to be able to escape the US if you or have be in another place, have multiple maybe residencies, multiple passports, be on multiple grids if you can. Like you should have enough money to just randomly buy a plane ticket today and move to this country and start a new life there. And you should have I mean, the average American I heard has like I think $500 in say, or doesn't even have $500 for an emergency. Like,
Yeah. So 50% of Americans are not able to afford a $700 bill. And it's getting It's getting worse because of how much debt we've gone into after COVID.
yeah, that's crazy. I mean, if you tell me something like that, I'm
Well,
like
60% of
I
Americans have
feel,
no exposure to the stock market.
okay. So you think like the average American should just like, or let's say the young 20-year-old guy, like should he just like start investing or what should he do?
Here would be my advice if I could go back to younger me, and not life advice, but money advice. 2 words: stop comparing. Okay. This is why so many people, no matter how little or how much money they have, they're unhappy because we're always comparing ourselves to other people. This person has more than me. This person has a better life than me. And guess what? They're either faking it for views or for attention, or they got it from a different way. You're not going to get there, and you're going to spend your whole life with that carrot dangling in front of you, never feeling fulfilled, always chasing it and wasting your time. You also can't compare yourself to people who have less than you and say, oh, well, I'm doing better than them, so I shouldn't grow better because I'm in a good place. No, you need to focus on you and what your realistic goals are. And so here's the thing: you have to invest your money, right? You have to, because for 99.99% of everyone in America or in the world right now, the only sliver of a chance you have to making it to a comfortable lifestyle and not working at Walmart when you're 80 years old is to invest your money, whether it's through markets, whether it's through real estate, whether it's through a business. You have to do that, because if you just work your regular job at $50,000-$60,000 a year, you put your $5,000 a year at IRA, they don't know about management fees in the 401k, which is going to eat them alive. That's the number one thing I noticed, that there's 2 reasons why people can't retire. They think they will. Even the slow process people, they're like, oh, I'll have this much money and I'll retire then. No, the management fee of 2% is going to wipe out 45% of your retirement. You don't know that. And you don't have your HSA being filled up, and you can't leave work because you can't afford private insurance until Social Security and Medicare kicked in. Those 2 things are probably the biggest, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. Stop comparing. Okay. That's the thing I would tell people, because if you focus on what that person has, you're never going to be fulfilled. And if you focus on what that person has and you're better than them, you're never going to be ambitious. Focus on yourself, focus on the right plan. Don't worry about, oh, this person made a bunch of money in a short period of time, I'm going to do the same thing. And then you lose everything. That person has a nice car and a nice house because they did this. I'm going to go do this. Now you're in debt. No, focus on yourself. Do that. Also, understand it's a long game. Find moderation. And here's the thing: if the world's going to fucking collapse, if America collapses to a point where we need bunkers and shit, the rest of the world's going with it. So I would say the idea of needing to worry about properties and all the other stuff around the world, once again, I think there's a understanding there, but I think that once again, we're getting ahead and people are going to start saying, well, I got to have all this. And they spend all their time, focusing on having that rather than, focusing on their actual life and their plan. We're not going to collapse like Rome in our lifetime. It's just not possible. The world's global economy is way too interconnected that it's not like the America's going to implode and turn into a third world country and everyone else is going to come and get us. It's not going to happen. If we implode, everyone implodes. China was on its way to getting to us, but now they're falling back. There's the biggest economies in the world. I told everybody this 2 years ago, and it's actually coming true. The two biggest emerging markets in the world, I said 2 years ago, are going to be India and Vietnam. And it's come true. Those are the two biggest emerging markets in the world right now. India is going to take over China in population too. We've got a population crisis. That's what's going to lead us down. Is going to be our downfall in the West is the fact that we're going to have more older people relying on less younger people who are having less children for themselves because we're overworked and we're in the rat race. And eventually we're going to have what China is having right now. And that's this population of older people not having enough younger people to support them. And that's what's going to bring about a collapse, I think. Okay. Whoo, that was a monologue I just did.
I love it. I love it. It's super good information. So like, let's say I had $10,000 right now, just whatever, just ready to invest. What would you do? Like, let's say I had $10,000 saved up.
I would say, before you think about investing, forget the market for a second. I think the market's going to be choppy for a year or two because Fed rates are high and they're not going anywhere for a while. And I don't think the market's going to crash again, but I also don't think we're going up right now. I think we're going to have like that 2008 to 2013 where we kind of just like did this for a few years. I'm personally invested in dividends. I sold last year at this time before the market pulled down. I actually started transferring money from the US markets to the Chinese market because the Chinese market had crashed that year as the US market went up. So I was like, let me take my money from the US market and put it in value. I'm glad I did. Last year and into this year, I started getting into dividend stocks. I think those are the safest, the best option right now, because instead of trying to pick a sector or a stock in this wild time, I want to be in something that's paying out those dividends that other people aren't selling because they just want to collect those dividends, right? And not only are they compounding, but when the dividends pay out, they pay out $1 per a fixed amount per share. So if the market falls and those shares go down and they pay out a dividend, I get more free shares than I would when it was higher. And so as it stays low, I'm collecting compounding more shares. Then when the share goes up, I have more free shares that make more money. So that's what I've been doing. I'm actually really green on that portfolio right now. But if I had $10,000 right now, going into a potential recession, the number one most important thing to do is pay down your debt. That's what people are doing. They're trying to time the bottom of the market, but what people don't get is going into a recession, especially with high rates like this, paying down your high interest rates is the most important thing, because if you put it in the market and the market doesn't go up or falls, you've now lost value in that money. All the while, your debt is compounding on that interest, and you're outpacing your debt by what you gain in the market. And even if the market goes on another bull run, if it takes 4 years, you're up 40% on your interest debt and you've fallen behind. Now you lose your job. You have to sell your stocks at a loss to pay off some of the debt, which is just going to keep compounding because you can't pay off the interest, let alone the principal, and you're out of a job. Fuck all that.
You're losing the race with the debt. Yeah.
There's no point. The market makes 7% a year, so it's better to put there than pay your 3% interest. No, that's bullshit. Pay your high interest rate. If I had $10,000 right now and I had any debt, I'd be throwing that at the debt. Fuck $10,000 in this market right now. Pay down the principal on your credit cards. The highest the interest debt you have, pay that shit down, because when a recession hits, you don't know. Like I said, remember when we opened this up with, I go in thinking the worst, that amount I could lose. Same thing. You don't think about losing your job, but you lose your job. You got money in equities. Those equities are down or flat, and you've got debt, that's piling up. You're going to get so far in debt. It's bad. Fuck the market. The market's always going to be there. Get your debt under control. I know somebody in our community who had a $200,000, went to medical school or something like that, $200,000 in loans, right? Didn't pay it off for several years, partied, did his own thing, went back to pay it off. His $200,000 was $270,000. Well, he just started his job and he bought a BMW and all this other stuff. Started paying money at it monthly, right? Paying $1,000 a month at it. Didn't realize that wasn't even paying 50% of the interest every month, which started compounding. 12 years later, he now owes $500,000 on a $200,000 loan he had.
That's crazy. And that's how people literally, like, that's modern enslavement, I feel like.
It's because it's ignorance, because people don't know about how compounding interest works, right? So they think, 5% of $200,000, that's what? It's $10,000. Oh, I owe $210. No problem. I'll pay that off some other time. No, you owe $210 after the first interest payment, right? Like, and then it compounds. So, it's hard though. People say, well, we should teach this shit in high school. What 15-year-old horny ass motherfucker wants to listen to this shit in high school? Nobody does.
Yeah. I mean, I think though they should at least teach the basics, like all that you just described. Like, if you get deeper into it, of course, then you can start making sense of it. But at least just the basics. Like, if when I was in high school, I didn't even know what inflation was. Like, I didn't even know what that is. I
But
didn't
if
know
if
how.
they taught it to you, do you think you really would have cared, or were you just been waiting to get out of class?
I mean, looking back, maybe I myself personally, I would have cared. I can see like the random horny ass guy not caring. I can see that, and I think honestly, people are. It's like people's fault anyway. Like, it's the information is out there. You can just go to YouTube and just check it out. Like, it's
Well,
not
fun
like,
fact, a lot of us actually got taught a lot of this stuff. We just don't remember being taught it. When you went to what was it? The government class that we took. I don't know what it was called. Whatever. Everybody has different called something else, whether it was government or it was
I was in Austria, so I'm not sure like
all
what
right, so in the U.S., at least when I was in high school, we had like a class like when you were in 10th grade or whatever, and then again, whatever it was like not economics, but it was like government or it was like civics or whatever you call it. Like, you learn a lot of this stuff in there. It's in your textbook. The teacher probably went over it, but you didn't remember it because you're 15 years old. You've never had a job. You don't have a car payment. You don't have credit cards. You don't pay taxes. Who gives a shit? That's for old people stuff. I don't need to worry about that. I just need to memorize what I have to put it on the test and be done.
Yeah,
It
that
is
does
what
make
it is.
sense. That does make sense because like back then, I mean, in my school, for example, they taught us about like countries like Germany, for example, back in the 1930s when they had like hyperinflation after war and everything. So like, I mean, I didn't think about that anymore. I didn't think about like how that can affect my life. And frankly, I didn't even really understand it at that age. So yeah, you do have a point. Yeah,
Like, I wish we could teach it, but I think that's why I found success is because I teach it in a way that keeps people's attention, right? Like, instead of just trading and trying to like tell you how to get rich quick or like being boring and talk about it, I'm throwing it in there and I'm like, somebody's like, what's happening in the market today? I said, man, it's going down just like your mom, and people laugh at that. Or people say, I'll be like, hey, Stocky, how come this stock is performing better? I'm like, well, think about it this way. It's the end of the night, right? And this stock is like you. Okay. All the other stocks in the sector suck right now. And, this stock isn't great, but it's kind of the best available. And there's some chick at the bar. It's closing time. She's had a few drinks. She looks around. You're not her first pick. Hell, she probably doesn't even want to have sex with you, but looking around, you're the best that's available. You see? And so people laugh at stuff like that, but it sticks in their mind. And that's how I've been able to teach it. And back to your point a second ago about being younger and older, I think it's also why people not necessarily change how they vote, but their ideas on economics change from younger to older. When you're
yeah,
younger and you
100%.
don't have money, or you're broke and you're sharing an apartment and you're in a shitty job, you see these people with houses and landlords and people with money. You're like, man, those people should pay more taxes so that I don't have to do this. And these people are getting, they shouldn't have this much wealth. They shouldn't do that. But then as you start grinding and you build a business or you work hard and you get promoted, you buy a house, all of a sudden you got to pay taxes on that house. You're like, whoa, okay, maybe we shouldn't raise the taxes so much. You have kids, you have, college to pay for. You're like, yo, maybe, okay, all right, you know what? Maybe that child tax credit is okay. Like, okay, yeah, maybe the billionaires have too much money, but let's get, maybe I was wrong, and I just think it changes with time and understanding.
I mean, you're super right about it. And it's just a simple things. For example, I recently, like, when did I start? Last year, I started like renting my own apartments and shit. And then I realized, like, for example, in the contract, it says like every year when the contract renews, they're gonna calculate in the tax of the federal bank. So, for example, right now I'm in Mexico, and it said like every year it could be like it raises by like 5% the price of the apartment. And I just realized that last year. So it's like these little things where like, oh shit, they're just taking my money. Like, they're actually just trying to take as much money as they can. And then you realize that you're working for your money, and then you start changing your mind. Like when I was 18, I didn't know shit. I just thought whatever, like some people work and some people do this, and yeah, like they should probably tax the rich, or I mean, of course they should put tax, but what I mean is like they should just tax everyone as much as possible. And then you just realize like when they just spend all the money on dumb shit that you don't agree with, like wars, and with the I mean, I call it a scamdemic that happened. Certainly in the way it was portrayed. and the way they try to take people's freedoms away. And then you just realize you're working, and then the government takes your money and just puts in the things that you probably don't agree with.
Oh yeah,
And
you don't have a say in it. You like it's like, and here's the thing. I'm all about closing tax loopholes for the super wealthy because there's ways that they get away with it. Like I
yeah,
don't want to raise their taxes. I just want them to pay what they're supposed to, right? Because that would help out. But that's not the solution. Like people don't understand. If you tax the 0.1% in America, right? If you tax them 100% of their income, 100% of their assets, right? You taxed everything. You would probably get, I don't know, a couple $1 trillion. That sounds great.
yeah.
But you only get to milk that cow one time because now you've taken everything from them. They can't generate that money again. So now all that money's gone. Do you know that even if you taxed 100% of all that from the 0.1%, you wouldn't even be able to fund Medicare for 1 year, let alone pay off student debts, Social Security, debt, other social programs. Like, and now that money's gone forever. And now you actually, what money you did get from them before is now gone in the future. And now your debt's going to spiral out of control. So it's not about taxing people. Like, sure, people are like, oh, that's just a cop out. You could at least do more. Sure. But even if you do tax them some more and get some more money, who knows what the government's going to do with it? They get another $200 billion from taxes. They might throw it in for Bangladesh. I mean, Bangladesh just got in this newest spending bill. They're sending like $10 million to Bangladesh for freedom of speech.
Okay.
Right? Like, I mean, I get that, like, some people are like, well, we want to help other countries because if we help them, they'll help us in the future. What about the people dying in our streets? But you
Exactly.
want to tax these rich people even more money, which, okay, government takes the money. Yay, the government took their money. How come our lives aren't better? Well, they sent it somewhere else and we can never tax them again. So guess what? You're screwed again.
That with the tax is an interesting issue, because even I'm reaching a point now where, like, I feel like, I mean, even with all the tax laws, it's very easy for me to just structure my things in a way where I don't have to do that anyways. It's like all these laws, at the end of the day, it crushes the normal guy. Like, you could have the same law for like this normal guy, and then it's the same law for someone who's more wealthy, and then the wealthy guy can just kind of sort of like evade it
But
because
what do you think? What do you think tickets are? A ticket for speeding or drugs or anything like that is just a tax on poor people. Because if I'm rich, like for example, if I'm rich and I and there's a fine of $200 for having pot because it's illegal, but it's not, it's like it's finable. Okay, I have $200. I wouldn't even know if $200 fell on the ground and I lost it. I'm going to smoke pot because it doesn't bother me, right? Oh, here's a ticket. Okay, here's your $200. Let me smoke up another joint. Oh, here's 200 more bucks. Okay, fine. Let me just roll up the next joint in $100 bills. I don't care. If I get caught speeding, it doesn't matter, but I get pulled over from the police. My heart's not going to race. I don't care. Okay, dude, you're wasting my time. Just give me 5 tickets. I don't care. I got somewhere to be, right? So but for poor people, they have to go to court. They have to pay it. They have to wonder if they're going to, it's a tax on poor people. Finland's different though. They will tax you based on your income. One guy got like $170,000 speeding ticket because he was a millionaire.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. Yeah. It's crazy. I mean, for example, I remember during the height of the banana virus, I call it, when I was in the train and I was in Austria, and then this police woman came, whatever, and was like, yeah, you need to wear a mask. And then I was like, no, I don't want to wear it. Or I told her that I don't have a mask. And then she told me, well, then you'll have to pay $75. And then back then I was like, oh shit, should I really do it? Fuck it, let me. And then I tried to argue with her, and then she was kind of pressed. I was like, fuck it, let me just wear the mask. And then she went by, and then I took it off. Like now, bro, if someone told me, yo, like if you don't wear this mask, you're paying $75, I'd be like, whatever. Just give me the ticket, leave me the fuck alone. And it's true. It's just that it's a tax on the poor people, like you said, and it's not really about that you should tax the richer people. It's because it's at the end of the day they can afford it. Like they can afford to evade these things. Just go to another country, set up residency here, kind of have fake apartments here, and then just kind of like reroute it, have a business somewhere in this country, set up a residence in this country, connected to that country. Oh yeah, you're paying some fees here and there, but you don't care. At the end of the day, you're saving more money. So that's the reality of it. So yeah, it's true. Just trying to, like, the idea that you're just trying to tax more. It's not.
I think the fact that I grew up so poor and so impoverished my entire life kind of has put me to a point where no matter how much money I make now, I still live the same life. Like I still use Groupon when I go out to restaurants to try new ones. I still, look for, I build, like if I do my own work around the house and stuff like that, like that's just my thing because I grew up that way. It's why I talk to some athletes, like a lot of professional athletes go bankrupt because they don't understand that the money's not going to keep coming in forever. And on top of that, they live a certain lifestyle. Next thing you know, they bought, it's like MC Hammer. He made $30 million one year. Guess how much he spent that year? 30 million. He never made 30 million again. And he didn't save any of that money. These athletes, they make all this money. They spend all this money trying to, take care of their friends and party, and they buy all these houses. They get injured or they lose productivity. They get out of the league. Now they've got 5 houses that are $2 million each. And it's like, oh, cool. But all of a sudden, those houses, 5% of the value of every house goes in non-returnable capital every year, even if you pay it off. So that's $100,000 per house you got to pay in tax, insurance, and maintenance. All of a sudden, you don't have any income coming in. So now you've got to sell a house to take care of the other house. Then you keep doing it. Now all of a sudden you're broke and now you're bankrupt because you didn't put your money away because you didn't understand how it works. Okay. And for me, I think that, it's like the baseball players. Why do baseball players, professional baseball players, don't go bankrupt nearly at the level of NFL and NBA players? Do you know why?
I have no clue.
So most Major League Baseball players, even if they're signed at first overall pick, they spend years in the farm system, right? And when you're in the minor leagues, you have to drive on buses and sleep in motels and get your foods, and you're getting very cheap contracts. And you have to, so you learn to budget. You learn to kind of deal within your means before you get called up to the majors, and then you do well and you get a big contract or whatever. And then you've learned that, right? You kind of learn through that idea of this is where I'm at. And I joke about this. Gotta go soon. I joke about this all the time, but I say, do you know the best way to becoming good with your money and be a good budgeter?
How?
Become an addict.
Okay.
Because don't do that. But
actually become an addict, or
because addicts will scrape together and survive on the least amount and find every deal and discount they have to scrape together every penny to get their fix. And once they get clean, they've already spent their entire lives or entire adulthood budgeting and learning. And so guess what? You're the best budgeter in the world.
Budgeting is important. And you hit a great point, and we can just write off that, and because you said you have to go. I think being poor or just living, at least for some time, with the pressure of not having money and trying to make sure that you're budgeting and still surviving is so valuable for when you actually become successful. Because if you don't know how to budget, if you don't know how to actually just not overspend and do dumb shit, that's why they say if you win your money in the lottery, most people lose it. And most of these basketball players and NFL players, they're not businessmen. They just get the money, right? They never knew how to really
Same thing with influencers, a lot of these young kids, I'm not saying you in particular, but a lot of these young kids who are YouTube stars, Twitch streamers, Instagram, whatever, TikTok, they're really popular right now and they're doing a lot, but they're spending, a lot of them are saying, well, I'm reinvesting all my money to make my audience, whatever. But if you're not putting it away, you don't have this idea that one day someone else is going to come and be because before you, not you, but before that person, there was somebody else who was on top. Guess what? You're on top now. There was somebody before you that you took over, and there'll be somebody after you. So you have to prepare for that and realize, it's not going to be, you're not going to be at the top forever. Someone else is going to come along, just like with the NFL, right? It's Derrick Henry, right? Best running back, right? At some point, someone else will be a better running back. Yeah. It just happens.
Exactly. Well, I really appreciate your time, bro. And you gave some super, super valuable information. Do you want to just give your Instagram or where people can find more information about how you
Google the stock guy? That's me. I don't want to shout out. I'm more here just to kind of to BS with you, but I'm the stock guy. It's not hard to find me. Appreciate you inviting me. I try to go out to every interview I can because I I know there's a lot of communities out there that like to hear it. It's not that I have a special message. I think I just have a message that most people don't hear in today's society, which is, you can get rich quick, but that's not the plan for most people. Live your life, but also prepare for your future. You don't have to choose one or the other. You don't have to struggle now for your future, and you don't have to struggle in your future because you party too much now. Find moderation, but the key, besides education, is stop comparing yourself to others and to what others have or don't have. You will always chase a carrot and you will never get it, and you will be unfulfilled. Focus on what's good for you, what's right for you. Stick to your plan. Live life in moderation. And don't look back and have too many regrets, okay? What you woke up today, last night you went to bed 30 years older. You woke up at your age today. You get a chance to do it again. Don't fuck it up this time.
That's some great words. All right. Thank you so much. And every guy, check out his YouTube channel, his Instagram, learn some stuff about investing, how to be smart. And yeah, really appreciate it for coming on.
No, my pleasure. And maybe we'll chat again soon.
100%. All right.
All right. Bye.
Man.